The best leaders make everyone around them better. Rethinking the MBA shows you how they do it. We will focus on what it says about business and time. Stay with me, the best part is near the end. Chapter 1, Part 1, The State of MBA Education. The Changing MBA Marketplace 3. A close look at the curriculum 4. A rising chorus of concerns 5. Meeting the challenges of globalization, leadership, and integration 6. Innovations in pedagogy and course design. Chapter 2, Part 2, Institutional Responses. University of Chicago Booth School of Business Flexibility and the Discipline-Based Approach 8. INSEAD The Credo of Globalization 9. The Center for Creative Leadership Development at the Core 10. Harvard Business School General Management and the Focus on Practice 11. Yale School of Management Integration and Large-Scale Change 12. Stanford Graduate School of Business Customization and Large-Scale Change 13. Conclusion. Business Schools at a Crossroads. Notes about the authors. Acknowledgements. We benefited from the support and assistance of a large number of people in developing and writing this book and would like to take this opportunity to offer our thanks. Our first debt is to the many deans, faculty, administrators, executives, and students who kindly consented to interviews, provided us with data, sponsored our case studies, and otherwise helped us generate the raw material that lies at the heart of our analysis. This book simply would not have been possible without their assistance and goodwill, and we are deeply grateful for the time, thoughtfulness, and attention that they devoted to our never-ending questions and requests. We are also grateful to our Harvard Business School colleagues, who contributed in a multitude of ways. John Quelch and Robert Kaplan launched us on the project by suggesting the idea of a colloquium on the future of MBA education, convincing us to assume the assignment, and then helping us to design a format and approach. Our dean, Jay Light, was an enthusiastic champion. He graciously provided the resources necessary for the project, as well as unwavering support during the 3 years that we were hard at work. Over 100 of our faculty participated in the colloquium we held in May 2008 to discuss our preliminary findings. Many also took the extra time to offer, in writing, a rich set of suggestions for possible curriculum changes. A number of our colleagues also provided extremely helpful feedback during informal discussions, lunches, and hallway conversations. Our research team was absolutely outstanding. Michael Thomas was responsible for assembling the aggregate statistics and trend data of Chapter 2. Patricia Hernandez was responsible for the curriculum analysis of Chapter 3, and Karen Knoop and James Weber wrote all of the original case studies that appear, in modified form, as Chapters 7 through 12. We met often with the members of this group, both individually and collectively, and were repeatedly impressed by their creativity, scholarly standards, and dedication to the project. They not only contributed much of the data and supporting analysis that underlie our arguments, but also helped us develop several key ideas. During the process of writing, we had many helpers as well. Colleen Cafton carefully and sensitively edited the original case studies so that they fit seamlessly into Part 2 of the book. Jeff Kehoe, our editor at Harvard Business Press, provided wise counsel throughout the writing process, steering us towards stronger, more compelling arguments and storylines. The 4 anonymous reviewers of the draft manuscript provided us with thought-provoking suggestions, criticisms, and questions that significantly improved the final version. Our assistants, Alexandra Gurel and Andrea Truax, kept us on course from beginning to end. They made appointments, managed our increasingly complex calendars, coordinated interviews and group meetings, kept us on task, and helped us produce the polished, final version of the manuscript. Without their guidance and gentle direction, we would never have completed this project. As is customary, we save our deepest thanks for our families. Srikant thanks his wife, Swati, David thanks his wife, Lynn, and Patrick thanks his mother, Marion, and his partner, Shada. All four provided us with continual support much needed during a 3-year project, as well as countless suggestions and ideas. They were invaluable sounding boards, as well as thoughtful critics. Most important, they kept us grounded during the long process of developing and writing this book by helping us maintain a healthy perspective. Many times their love and encouragement kept us going. For these reasons, we dedicate this book to them. Introduction: A Degree in Transition. In 2008, Harvard Business School, HBS, celebrated its 100th anniversary. It was an occasion for celebrating past achievements, but also an opportunity to reflect on the challenges facing all business schools in a rapidly changing environment. MBA programs, in particular, were the subject of growing scrutiny as they wrestled with questions of how to prepare students for increasingly complex organizations and careers. These new demands would require MBA programs to take a broader view of their graduates' responsibilities to multiple stakeholders, and to provide their students with a deeper understanding of such phenomena as globalization, leadership, and innovation, as well as the ability to think critically, decide wisely, communicate clearly, and implement effectively. In this context of escalating demands on MBA programs, we began our research for a colloquium on the future of MBA education. Our efforts started modestly. Initially, our focus was internal, with the spotlight on our own institution and its strengths and weaknesses. As our dean, J. Light, Riley put it, it was our view that you need to think critically about what you are doing every 100 years or so, whether you need to or not. Our research objective was to generate sufficient raw material for a 2-day event that would allow our faculty to reflect on the school's history and consider its positioning for the future. But that effort quickly expanded as we began to gather data on industry trends and spoke with deans and faculty at other schools. "Thank goodness you're doing this," they said. "All of us need to take a hard look at where business education is headed." With that prompting, we broadened our scope. We realized that the timing was auspicious, and that many in the larger business school community were ready for a deeper, collective reflection on our enterprise. The seminal reports on business education by the Carnegie Corporation and the Ford Foundation were at that time nearly 50 years old, having been published in 1959. Porter and McKibben's comprehensive follow-on study, published in 1988, was dated as well. In the meantime, public criticism of graduate business education had sharply escalated, as had calls for reform. A number of schools had already responded vigorously, launching significant, highly publicized changes in their MBA programs. Major reviews were underway at countless other institutions. We therefore began collecting data with a larger goal in mind, documenting both the forces reshaping business education and schools' responses to them, in order to prompt a dialogue about the future of the MBA degree. The time and resources available to us forced us to focus our efforts on a subset of schools. For the most part, we studied leading MBA programs in the United States and Europe, supplemented by information on a small number of business schools in Asia and Latin America and a few non-business school institutions teaching management and leadership. We focused on leading schools because changes at top-ranked institutions are frequently indicative of broader trends. In fact, when we shared our findings with administrators and faculty from a wide range of MBA programs across the globe, they strongly affirmed our observations and recommendations. Some had already begun implementing the changes we describe. Nevertheless, an important caveat to this study is that our conclusions about rethinking the MBA are based in large part on data from, and events and changes at, the subset of institutions that we examined. In the process of completing our project, we received an unprecedented level of cooperation from deans, faculty, administrators, students, executives, oversight councils, and accrediting organizations, in short, from virtually every group involved in and concerned about the future of MBA education. On March 6 and 7, 2008, we convened a collection of deans, faculty, and executives at Harvard Business School to discuss our preliminary findings. It was a sobering meeting, and one that prompted considerable debate about the long-term health of the enterprise. On May 16 and 17, 2008, we held a similar two-day meeting with our own faculty, who responded with equally lively debates. It is in the spirit of those debates that we decided to write this book. Our goal is to prompt the same degree of reflection and discussion that we encountered at our two colloquia, while also pointing the way forward. Prospective readers, however, may well ask, why do we need another look at the future of business education? There has, after all, been an outpouring of articles and books on the subject in recent years, and many of them have been deeply thoughtful. Most studies have questioned the relevance, value, and purpose of the MBA degree. A few have proposed dramatic changes. We have found these studies to be invaluable, and they inform our views and are referenced throughout our book. But we also found them lacking in important respects. Most have been either sweeping critiques or historical reviews, with limited data on current programs and limited sampling of the perspectives and needs of diverse constituencies. For the most part, they have been critiques from within by academics, for academics often at the level of philosophy and first principles. Our approach is different. It is heavily empirical and relies on several unique sources of primary data. First, we conducted extensive interviews with business school deans and business executives. We interviewed 30 deans, primarily from highly ranked business schools in the United States and Europe. All interviews lasted at least an hour, and many were considerably longer. We also spoke informally with many other deans and associate deans from business schools across the globe. We interviewed an equal number of current or former business executives, largely senior members of their organizations with some responsibility for or familiarity with MBA recruiting. They were selected from 4 broad sectors to reflect a diversity of views: financial services, consulting, multinational corporations, and high technology. In all cases, we used detailed semi-structured interviews, aimed broadly at identifying respondents' perceptions of the value added by the MBA degree as well as current weaknesses, deficiencies, or unmet needs. We also probed for their assessments of the reforms already underway at different schools. In addition, we benefited from informal discussions with several hundred executives, both individually and in groups. Second, we collected detailed industry data in search of unnoticed or emerging trends in graduate business education. Here, we focused on changes over the last decade in applications, enrollments, tuition and fees, faculty hiring, and other critical variables, often broken out by school rankings. We received extraordinary assistance in this process from the Association to Advance Collegiate Schools of Business International, AACSB, the Graduate Management Admissions Council, GMAC, and the Graduate Business Administrators Group, GBAG, who aided us in assembling, compiling, and interpreting the critical data. Third, we developed composite portraits of the curricula at 11 leading MBA programs. We selected these programs as representative of a broad cross-section of MBA program content, architecture, and pedagogy. The data, which were assembled from school websites and publications and then validated through conversations and correspondence with school administrators, faculty, and deans, present a fine-grained picture of the offerings of each school. They help us answer a question that has arisen repeatedly over time: just how similar or different are business school programs? Most analyses to date have focused on only a small subset of variables, such as the number and type of required courses. Our data, by contrast, range from the macro to the micro, covering the overall architecture of programs and structure of curricula, the sequence and range of first and second year required and elective course offerings, pedagogical approaches, and the content and topics featured in individual courses. Fourth, we identified a range of exemplary course offerings that were responsive to the opportunities and needs cited by deans and executives. These courses were all innovative in some respect. Several featured novel subject matter, others employed non-traditional pedagogies, and still others introduced radically new ways of looking at long-established subjects. In each case, we examined the course syllabi and then spoke directly with teaching faculty to understand precisely how the courses were designed and delivered. The resulting portraits are highly granular and can be viewed as templates for others to follow. Finally, we developed 6 case studies that capture, in sharp relief, the themes we uncovered in our interviews. Each case features a single institution: the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, INSEAD, the Center for Creative Leadership, Harvard Business School, Yale School of Management, and Stanford Graduate School of Business, and each shows, in a distinctive and well-developed form, how a leading MBA or executive program has responded to one or more of the distinctive forces affecting the industry as a whole. INSEAD, for example, shows an institution responding to the demand for students with a more global perspective, whereas Yale shows a program in full-fledged pursuit of integration and a multidisciplinary perspective. Each case also illustrates the accompanying process of change or development that the institution followed as it altered its curriculum and responded to new pressures and needs. In writing these cases, we had the full cooperation of deans, administrators, and faculty. In every case, we made site visits and conducted extensive interviews, including focus groups with students to ensure that their voices were heard and their experiences accurately represented. Together, these data present an unusually detailed picture of the current state of MBA education. Although our focus is on top-ranked institutions, we believe that they are bellwethers for the industry and are representative of larger trends. The data show an industry facing important challenges and institutions wrestling with basic questions of purpose, positioning, and program design. They also show an industry that has already begun the slow, painful process of adopting new approaches in order to maintain its relevance in a rapidly changing business environment. However, they come with an important caveat. All of our initial data were collected before the global economic crisis. How, if at all, does the crisis change our findings and conclusions? To find out, in the spring of 2009 we re-interviewed several deans, updated our 6 case studies, spoke with numerous executives, alumni, faculty members, and students, and collected additional post-crisis data. Our goal was to understand what business leaders might learn from the crisis, how business might change in its wake, and how our conclusions about the future of MBA education might have to be altered or modified to accord with the new reality. On the one hand, the economic downturn has provided some schools with a temporary respite from the forces buffeting graduate business education. Because MBA programs are often viewed by young people, especially those with few other career options, as a safe harbor for weathering economic storms, business school applications have historically been counter-cyclical. This crisis is no exception. In its aftermath, applications at the higher-ranked schools rose, although typically in a far more muted fashion than during past recessions, as did the number of takers of the graduate management admissions test, a likely indicator of future increases in applicants. Mid-ranked schools, meanwhile, have been busy promoting their superior job placements with regional employers and their specializations in energy, brand management, supply chain management, and human resources as ways of beefing up their applicant pools and class sizes. These advantages, we believe, albeit real and possibly significant in the short run, are likely to be temporary because most of the other forces unleashed by the economic crisis add to the already long list of concerns and unmet needs cited repeatedly by critics, the trends already underway, and the curricular changes that have been steadily gathering momentum. Consider, for example, one of the long-standing selling points of leading business schools: the access they provide to lucrative, highly selective careers. As Chapter 2 notes, students have long gone to business schools to gain entry to high-paying jobs in investment banking, private equity, and hedge funds. Even before the crisis, our interviewees reported, companies in these fields were starting to shift their hiring away from MBAs. As a result of the economic meltdown, access to these fields has dropped even more dramatically. Many jobs have simply disappeared. According to one estimate, in the 18-month period ending December 2008, 240,000 people were laid off on Wall Street. Compensation has fallen as well. In some cases, it is now capped by law. To respond to this shrinkage in the financial sector, business schools will have to alter their orientations and direction. They will have to attract a new set of recruiters, develop graduates with a different set of skills, and offer a different mix of courses. All are likely to lead to adjustments in business school curricula much like those described in chapters 5 and 6 of this book. Meanwhile, part-time and executive MBA programs, which fueled much of the growth in business school enrollments in recent years, are currently facing increasing pressure. For many students in these programs, the economic proposition looks less attractive as corporations reduce their support. Business schools are finding that this growth engine, which Chapter 2 notes has sustained many programs, especially those in the middle tier, for much of the last decade, is beginning to sputter. To attract and retain students, business schools will need to consider changes in curricula that enhance the value of MBA training in ways that are responsive to the criticisms and concerns described in Chapter 4. Increasingly, we believe, business schools are at a crossroads and will have to take a hard look at their value propositions. This was true before the economic crisis, but is even truer in its aftermath. The world has changed, and with it the security that used to come almost automatically with an MBA degree. As a recent report observed, on the nation SB school campuses, hope used to spring eternal. No more. High-paying jobs are no longer guaranteed to graduates, and the opportunity costs of 2 years of training, especially for those who still hold jobs and are not looking to change fields, loom ever larger. To remain relevant, business schools will have to rethink many of their most cherished assumptions. They will have to re-examine their curricula and move in new directions. The core of our conclusion is that business schools need to do 2 things if they are to develop effective leaders and entrepreneurs, as opposed to individuals trained primarily in analysis, reassess the facts, frameworks, and theories that they teach, the knowing component, while at the same time rebalancing their curricula so that more attention is paid to developing the skills, capabilities, and techniques that lie at the heart of the practice of management, the doing component, and the values, attitudes, and beliefs that form managers' worldviews and professional identities, the being component. We believe that shifts in MBA enrollments, changes in recruiting patterns, and a rising chorus of concerns from deans, faculty, executives, students, and the public at large make this rebalancing necessary. In the years since the Ford Foundation and Carnegie Corporation reports, business schools have introduced greater rigor and disciplinary thinking into their programs. Although this has been a welcome improvement, it came at a cost. Business schools often failed to emphasize the limitations of the theories they taught, the extent of the challenges and complexities of applying these theories in practice, the associated skills and attitudes required for thoughtful, effective application, and the critical lenses and judgment needed to evaluate specific contexts accurately and draw correct conclusions. Rebalancing MBA education toward doing and being aims to reduce the impediments to informed action that result from these deficiencies in skills, attitudes, and beliefs. Innovative thinking provides an example. Knowing about brainstorming, experimentation, and other creativity techniques does not prepare MBA students to do innovative thinking in the workplace. The latter requires sustained practice with, and immersion in, innovation processes, how to obtain customer insights, how to stimulate out-of-the-box thinking, and how to test and craft creative solutions. Similarly, being skills are important to managers as they work with and through others to achieve their organization's goals. To inspire and influence others over sustained periods requires careful reflection and introspection about one's strengths and weaknesses, values and attitudes, and the impact of one's actions on others. Without doing skills, knowledge is of little value. Without being skills, it is often hard to act ethically or professionally. Looking across MBA programs, we identify 8 unmet needs, many of them related to doing and being. Each presents an opportunity for MBA programs to innovate and change. These needs are as follows: gaining a global perspective, identifying, analyzing, and practicing how best to manage when faced with economic, institutional, and cultural differences across countries, developing leadership skills. Understanding the responsibilities of leadership, developing alternative approaches to inspiring, influencing, and guiding others, learning such skills as conducting a performance review and giving critical feedback, and recognizing the impact of one's actions and behaviors on others, honing integration skills, thinking about issues from diverse, shifting angles to frame problems holistically, learning to make decisions based on multiple, often conflicting, functional perspectives, and building judgment and intuition into messy, unstructured situations, recognizing organizational realities and implementing effectively, influencing others and getting things done in the context of hidden agendas, unwritten rules, political coalitions, and competing points of view, acting creatively and innovatively, finding and framing problems, collecting, synthesizing, and distilling large volumes of ambiguous data, engaging in generative and lateral thinking, and constantly experimenting and learning, thinking critically and communicating clearly, developing and articulating logical, coherent, and persuasive arguments, marshalling supporting evidence, and distinguishing fact from opinion, understanding the role, responsibilities, and purpose of business, balancing financial and non-financial objectives while simultaneously juggling the demands of diverse constituencies such as shareholders, employees, customers, regulators, and society, understanding the limits of models and markets, asking tough questions about risk by questioning underlying assumptions and emerging patterns, seeking to understand what might go wrong, learning about the sources of errors that lead to flawed decision-making and the organizational safeguards that reduce their occurrence, and understanding the tension between regulatory activities aimed at preventing social harm and market-based incentives designed to encourage innovation and efficiency. To make progress in these areas, business schools will need to continue to experiment with and commit more broadly to new pedagogies. Many of these techniques involve hands-on exercises and experiential learning. Some schools are using reflective exercises, supported by individual coaches, to develop leadership skills and build a sense of purpose and identity. Other schools are teaching innovative, integrative, or critical thinking in small groups. Field experiences and action learning pedagogies are helping students gain a global perspective, learn about the challenges of implementation, and see the gaps and difficulties of applying knowledge to practice. Pursuing these opportunities is not without challenges. They range from securing faculty with skills that span theory and application to broadening the research methods and research domains of business school scholars to addressing the higher costs of curricula that rely heavily on small group experiences and action learning. Although these challenges are significant, we believe that they are not insurmountable and offer a number of suggestions for how they might best be overcome by individual and collective action. That, in brief, is the premise of Rethinking the MBA. To make our argument, we have divided the book into two parts. Describes the larger environment in which business schools operate today. This section of the book is thematic and synthetic, focused on the broad forces reshaping institutions and their behavior. Among the topics we address are the shifts in supply and demand that are redefining the MBA marketplace, the current portfolio of programs and course offerings, the criticisms and concerns raised repeatedly by both insiders and outsiders, and the curriculum innovations and programmatic changes that have begun to emerge in response. Addresses many of these same issues, but in a more granular, particularized form. That section of the book contains our 6 case studies, each one a portrait of an individual institution that has adapted in a particularly powerful or exemplary way to the forces we describe in the first part of the book. The case studies show that programs facing a similar set of pressures have chosen different directions and paths, tailoring their approaches to their own distinctive traditions and values. We conclude the book with a chapter that draws larger lessons and presents a set of prescriptions and proposals for graduate business education based on our own interpretations of the trends and changes we have observed. Ultimately, this is a hopeful, positive story. Business schools have long been flexible, resilient institutions, and we believe that they are already demonstrating their capacity to respond to today's challenges. The global economic crisis has intensified the pressure to change, even as the resulting shortage of resources has made change more difficult. Despite these difficulties, or perhaps, more accurately, because of them, we believe that business schools have already begun to reassert their relevance. Search settings queue support sign out. Chapter 3, Part 1. The state of MBA education. To understand the challenges facing graduate business education, one must first understand the underlying forces of supply and demand. The MBA degree may be a highly distinctive product, but it is not immune to the forces of the marketplace. Examines these forces at both the macro and micro level. In the process, it provides a comprehensive, fine-grained portrait of the changes buffeting MBA programs today. Chapter 4 examines these criticisms in detail, while also noting Chapters 5 and 6 present a range of programmatic and curricular responses to the needs identified in Chapter 4, with supporting details provided in the case studies of Part 2. The two chapters are distinguished by both subject matter and level of analysis. Describes how business schools have tackled the challenges of a global perspective, leadership development and ethics, and integration, whereas Chapter 6 describes how schools have responded to the challenges of understanding organizational realities, fostering creative thinking, strengthening oral and written communication, contemplating the role and purpose of business, and understanding the limits of markets and models. In general, schools have been far more responsive to the first three needs. As a result, a range of alternative responses already exists. Some approaches are relatively simple and easy to implement, others are more complex and demanding, and still others require deep and sustained levels of commitment and expense. For each need, Chapter 5 describes the costs and benefits of the full spectrum of approaches and presents illustrative examples from several MBA programs. The responses described in Chapter 6, by contrast, are less widely established. In many cases, schools are still feeling their way. Experiential learning, for example, is frequently viewed as the best way of teaching students about organizational realities, but few schools have fully mastered this approach. Efforts in the area are still evolving, most remain works in progress. Schools are similarly wrestling with how best to teach creative thinking, oral and written communication, the role and purpose of business, and understanding the limits of markets and models. Frequently, the most effective responses we were able to identify were singular efforts, individual courses or projects rather than integrated, programmatic offerings. For this reason, Chapter 6 describes in detail a small number of cutting-edge courses in each area of need, rather than presenting a range of possible responses. Each example is intended to serve as a stimulus for fresh thinking rather than as the one best way forward, in hopes that schools will improvise and expand on these approaches to develop distinctive solutions of their own. Search settings Q support sign out to the changing MBA marketplace. At first glance, the marketplace for graduate management training looks strikingly healthy. Applications and enrollments continue to rise, tuition and fees continue their steady march upward, and the number of programs continues to expand. At the same time, however, there are a number of disturbing signs suggesting that the MBA degree, especially in its traditional full-time, two-year form, is at a crossroads. The golden passport first, the good news. For many years, a wide range of indicators have been positive. In the United States, graduate management training has long been regarded as a golden passport for many jobs, the ticket of entry to prestigious, high-profile positions. Whether the job is CEO of a large, multinational corporation, head of a high-tech venture capital fund, or a powerful government job such as Secretary of the Treasury or Mayor of New York City, the MBA has frequently been the degree of choice. In fields such as investment banking and strategy consulting, it has long been virtually a requirement for entry, the primary means of gaining admission to an otherwise inaccessible field. Applications and enrollments have followed suit. In the United States, the number of students receiving one of the many different types of Master's degrees in business grew more than sixfold in the last 3 decades, rising steadily from 21,561 in 1969-1970 to 150,211 in 2006. Moreover, interest in these degrees has become increasingly global, especially in rising nations such as India and China. 74 new graduate management programs were introduced worldwide in 1997. A decade later, 641 new graduate management programs were introduced in the first half of the year alone. Of these, 113 were North American, and the other 528, over 80% of the total, were international. Although it is difficult to get precise numbers on the enrollment of international students in American graduate management programs today, there is no question that demand has been on the rise. The percentage of international students who took the Graduate Management Admissions Test (GMAT) and sent their scores to top U. Business schools a reasonable proxy for demand, because there is no evidence suggesting that students have increased. The number of schools to which they apply rose dramatically in recent years. In 1998, 24% of GMAT score senders were international. Of that total, 5% were from India and 5% from China. By 2007, 42% of GMAT score senders had become international, with 21% from India and 8% from China. In 2009, however, in part because of the financial crisis and difficulties in obtaining student loans, and in part because of an increase in high-quality MBA programs in other countries, the number of international students enrolled in U. MBA programs declined for the first time in several years. Time will tell whether this is a one-year deviation or the beginning of a long-term secular decline. Tuition and fees have risen commensurately. Mean total costs, tuition and fees, at top U. MBA programs nearly doubled from 2000 to 2006 for public school in-state residents and rose approximately 75% for out-of-state attendees. During the same period, and starting from a much higher base, mean total costs at private or independent schools rose approximately 50%. Although the effective price is usually lower because of grants and financial aid, these figures do suggest a thriving enterprise facing an expanding market and steady increases in demand. Country of citizenship of GMAT takers sending scores to top U. MBA schools source, Graduate Management Admissions Council. The rise of substitutes. The figures, however, mask significant changes that lie just below the surface. In particular, the traditional MBA degree, 2 years of full-time, in-residence training, is losing its place as the dominant model of graduate business education. 20 years ago, if one spoke of graduate training in business, one was speaking almost by definition of the 2-year MBA degree. Yet today, substitutes abound. They include 1-year MBA programs, 1-year specialized Master S programs, part-time MBA programs, executive MBA programs, online MBA programs, and corporate training and development programs. The appendix to this chapter provides a list of the wide range of Master S degrees offered by a sample of leading U. Business schools. The traditional 2-year program now accounts for only 40% of the MBA degrees conferred by AACSB-accredited business schools. Mean total student tuition and fees at the top 20 U. MBA schools, 2000 to 2006 source, AACSB and Businessweek annual MBA program information. In Europe, the 1-year MBA degree has already become the dominant form of MBA training. As -1 indicates, of the 31 leading European business schools ranked among the top 100 schools globally in surveys by the Financial Times and The Economist's Intelligence Unit, over 2/3, 22 schools, offer degrees in 12 months. 4 programs are even shorter. Only IESE and London Business School continue to expect 2 full-time years from most of their students. Because many of the 1-year programs admit students with deeper, more extensive business backgrounds and experiences, many employers and recruiters view students graduating from European 1-year and 2-year programs as more similar than different. European MBA Programs 1. Audencia Nantes School of Management, France 12 months 2. Bradford School of Management, UK/TIA's Nimbus, Netherlands/Tilburg University, Germany 12 months 3. Cass Business School, City University, UK 12 months 4. Cranfield School of Management, UK 12 months 5. Escuela de Alta Derecho y Administración EADA, Spain 11 months 6. ISAID Business School, Spain 12, 15, or 18 months 7. EM Lyon Business School, France 12 months 8. HEC School of Management, France 16 months 9. IESE Business School, University of Navarra, Spain 21 months 10. IMD, Switzerland 11 months 11. Imperial College Business School, UK 12 months 12. INSEAD, France and Singapore 10 months 13. Instituto de Empresa, i.e., Business School, Spain 13 months 14. International University of Monaco, Monaco 10 months 15. Judge Business School, University of Cambridge, UK 12 months 16. Lancaster University Management School, UK 12 months 17. Leeds University Business School, UK 12 months 18. London Business School, UK 15-21 months 19. Manchester Business School, UK 18 months 20. Mannheim Business School, Germany 12 months 21. Nottingham University Business School, UK 12 months 22. Nyenrode Business Universiteit, Netherlands 12-15 months 23. Rotterdam School of Management, Erasmus University, Netherlands 12 months 24. SED Business School, University of Oxford, UK 12 months 25. SDA Bocconi School of Management, Italy 12 months 26. University College Dublin, Smurfit School of Business, Ireland 12 months 27. University of Bath School of Management, UK 12 months 28. University of Edinburgh Business School, UK 12 months 29. University of Strathclyde Business School, UK 12 months 30. Vlerick Leuven Gent Management School, Belgium 12 months 31. Warwick Business School, UK 12 months Note: all listings are full-time MBA programs that were ranked among the top 100 globally in 2008 by either the Financial Times' Global MBA Rankings or the Economist's Intelligence Unit Rankings. They are listed alphabetically rather than by ranking because not all schools appear in both surveys. Data on program lengths were taken from the websites of each school, accessed December 1, 2008. In part, the reasons for differences in program length in Europe and the United States are historical and idiosyncratic. Many graduate business programs in Europe were originally established outside traditional universities or in countries such as the United Kingdom, Ireland, Spain, and the Netherlands, where Master degrees were frequently 1 year in length. They therefore did not face the same pressure to offer 2-year programs as their U counterparts, which were struggling to establish academic legitimacy and strove to offer Master programs that fit the 2-year norm that has long prevailed in arts and sciences departments. But even in the United States, a small number of graduate business programs today offer a shorter, accelerated option. Northwestern, Cornell, and Emory have 1-year MBAs for students who have already taken the core required courses prior to enrollment, meaning that most have been undergraduate business majors, and Dartmouth offers a 1-year MBA for graduates of science PhD programs. Carnegie Mellon offers an MBA in 16 months, and Rochester offers one in 18 months. Meanwhile, more specialized one-year Master degrees have proliferated, especially in finance and financial engineering. In 2007-2008, there were 103 MS in finance programs worldwide, 66 were in the United States. Business schools at the University of Maryland, New York University, NYU, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, Pepperdine, and Purdue offer the degree, as do many U. Business schools, including Cambridge, Cass, Cranfield, Imperial College, London Business School, and London School of Economics. Although the number of these programs will probably decline in the aftermath of the economic crisis, the surviving programs are likely to retain their appeal to both experienced finance professionals who want to accelerate their progress up the ranks and physicists, mathematicians, and computer scientists who want to change fields and gain access to finance jobs. This phenomenon is hardly limited to finance. It has spread to a large number of other business functions as well. In 2007-2008, there were 188 programs worldwide offering an MS in management, 286 offering an MS in accounting, and 1,819 offering a full-time Master's degree in some other business-related field. In 2009, Manchester Business School, for example, offered 26 different specialized one-year Master's degrees, including corporate communications and reputation management, information systems, e-business technology, human resource management and industrial relations, and operations, project and supply chain management. At the 36 U. business schools in our study, students are increasingly obtaining MBA degrees through part-time and executive MBA programs. They favor such programs because of their convenience and lower opportunity costs. They can be taken locally while still holding a full-time job. Schools have been supportive because, as the dean of one high-ranking traditional program put it, they serve as an alternative delivery model. The range of part-time offerings is vast, ranging from weekend programs such as those at Chicago Booth, to morning programs such as those at Pepperdine University, to online programs, which may, the University of Virginia, or may not, George Washington University, include an on-campus component. At almost all schools, however, the acceptance rates for these programs are considerably higher than the acceptance rates for their full-time MBA programs. Part-time programs at leading business schools in major cities have admission rates close to 40%, whereas many other part-time programs have admission rates near 80%. At the most selective programs, median GMAT scores for part-time and full-time MBA programs are similar, whereas at less selective schools scores for part-time programs are approximately 50 points lower. Executive MBA programs, aimed at mid-career professionals with a decade or more of work experience, have proliferated, and for similar reasons. The patterns of acceptance rates and median GMAT scores, when required, at executive MBA programs are fairly similar to the patterns of acceptance rates and scores at part-time programs. At the leading business schools, one dean reported, we get better students with our executive MBA. They are more of the movers and the shakers, more knowledgeable and also more experienced. Executive MBA programs require periodic weekends or weeks in residence to attend classes, and run for 16 to 24 months. Hollowing out of the market, what is the combined impact of these trends? To understand them better, we analyzed data on the top 36 U. business schools. We focused only on U. schools because that allowed us to draw on comprehensive statistics collected annually by the AACSB. We limited ourselves to the top 36 programs in order to access publicly available rankings data, We determined a school's rank by averaging the annual rankings over several years provided by Businessweek, the Financial Times, News and World Report, and the Wall Street Journal. The results appear in -3 through 2 to 6. A look at the combined data shows a mature, slowly growing industry. Overall, between 2000 and 2008, enrollments at the top 36 MBA programs grew from 37,282 students to 41,259 students, an increase of %. Most of the increase came, as mentioned earlier, from growth in part-time and executive MBA programs. However, a comparison of the higher and lower-ranked schools shows two distinctly different pictures. At the top 20 schools, full-time MBA enrollments remained reasonably steady over the period, whereas part-time and executive MBA enrollments rose. Full-time enrollments were 16,073 students in 2000 and 16,580 students in 2008. They fluctuated in a relatively narrow range during those 9 years. Meanwhile, part-time and executive MBA enrollments rose by a slightly larger amount both absolutely and proportionally, from 10,933 students, % of the total, in 2000 to 13,359 students, % of the total, in 2008. Total enrollment at the top 36 MBA schools, 2000 to 2008 source, AACSB, Businessweek, News and World Report, and Dean's Offices of Business Schools. Enrollment at the top 20 MBA schools by program type, 2000 to 2008 source, AACSB, Businessweek, News and World Report, and Dean's Offices of Business Schools. At the lower-ranking schools, numbers 21 through 36, the picture was considerably different. Their full-time MBA program enrollments fell sharply, from 5,527 students in 2000 to 4,642 students in 2008. Nor was this decline limited to a few schools, as -6 illustrates. The declines were virtually across the board and even included some of the higher-ranking schools. In several cases, schools lost one or more full sections of students. These declines were accompanied, in many cases, by a greater proportion of applicants being offered a place in the full-time MBA program. As one dean put it, good, often proud, schools are having trouble building a class. Enrollment at the next highest 16 MBA schools by program type, 2000 to 2008 source, AACSB, Businessweek, News and World Report, and Dean's Offices of Business Schools. Yet during this same period, part-time and executive MBA enrollments at these schools showed substantial gains, rising from 4,749 students, % of the total, in 2000 to 7,483 students, % of the total, in 2008. How did these schools meet the rise in demand? Not by hiring new tenure-track faculty or by growing the faculty across the board, as did the higher-ranking schools, but instead by drawing heavily on non-tenured adjuncts and professors of practice. Between 2000 and 2006, the period for which we have data, the number of assistant professors at these schools fell from 381 to 367, and the number of associate professors fell from 363 to 346. The number of full professors grew modestly, from 499 to 520, but the number of instructors grew dramatically, from 138 to 189, an increase of over 37%. Percentage change in full-time MBA enrollment by program rank, 2000 to 2008 source, AACSB, Businessweek, News and World Report, and Dean's Offices of Business Schools. 7 presents the percentage change in full-time MBA program enrollments from 2004 to 2008 for leading European schools, ranked by averaging the annual rankings over several years published by The Economist. Although data for European schools are more limited, the patterns are similar to those observed for U.S. schools, showing significant declines in enrollment for most schools ranked from 16 to 31 and even for some schools in the top 15. Asia and Latin America, as growing developing markets, show markedly different trends. Although our data are partial and incomplete, they show business schools in these regions exhibiting strong increases in full-time MBA enrollments. These figures suggest a hollowing out of the full-time MBA marketplace. At the highest-ranking schools, full-time MBA enrollments have remained steady, while part-time and executive MBA enrollments have risen slightly. But at the lower-ranked schools, students have already voted with their feet. Part-time and executive MBA programs are favored over full-time programs, even when classes are taught increasingly by instructors rather than tenure-track faculty. The shift toward part-time and executive MBAs, we believe, is a mixed blessing. Our fieldwork suggests that, in many cases, it has been a response to declining full-time enrollments. Although in the short run the shift protects schools economically, in the long run it is unlikely to be sustainable, especially if full-time enrollments fall much further. In part, this is because the growth in part-time and executive MBA students had been strongly aided by employers subsidizing students for the costs of attending these programs when the economy was growing. Subsidies have fallen substantially in the wake of the downturn. Moreover, part-time and executive MBA programs differ from full-time programs in several other important respects. Part-time and executive MBA students, who continue to work and often expect to remain employed by their present employer, face much lower opportunity costs and very different value propositions than full-time students, who are gearing up for new jobs and potentially very different careers. Beyond a certain size, many institutions are likely to resist the continued rise of part-time and executive MBA enrollments because of a concern that programs have become too dependent on the vicissitudes of the economy and on a student body that can commit less time to academic work. In addition, part-time programs have student bodies that are usually much less diverse than those enrolled in full-time programs. Percentage change in European full-time MBA enrollment by program rank, 2004 to 2008 source, The Economist. The question, of course, is whether the decline in full-time MBA enrollments will continue to be limited to lower-ranking schools. There are conflicting schools of thought. Some believe that the decline at the lower-ranking schools is cyclical, driven largely by a strong economy that discourages talented and successful individuals from leaving their jobs to study for an MBA. In this view, the demand for full-time MBAs will pick up as the economy slows. Our data suggest otherwise. Full-time enrollments at these schools fell during the last economic slowdown of 2001 to 2003 and did not pick up notably in 2008. Others see the decline in full-time enrollments as a more secular trend. Lower-ranking schools might be bellwethers of the industry, serving as leading indicators and predictors of changes that will soon affect all institutions. According to this view, even the top schools will soon have to rethink their offerings if they are not to suffer the same fate. Still others respond with a quite different interpretation, seeing the data as evidence of a flight to quality. According to this view, the market may have bifurcated, with different forces affecting lower and higher-ranking schools. In this scenario, the top schools will be protected from the forces now buffeting lower-ranking schools because of their national and global brand reputations, their superior faculty and quality of instruction, and their distinctive added value. Is there any way to determine which of these alternative futures is more likely? Voices from the field: how deans and recruiters view the MBA degree immediately after graduation. A significant majority of the graduates of the leading 2-year, full-time MBA programs take jobs in financial services and consulting, driven in part by financial rewards that make it very difficult for companies in other sectors to compete for graduates. The numbers, at least before the recent financial crisis, have remained consistently high. In 2006, for example, 52% of Chicago Booth graduates took jobs in financial services and 22% took jobs in consulting. 42% of Harvard graduates took jobs in financial services and 22% took jobs in consulting, and 46% of Yale graduates took jobs in financial services and 15% took jobs in consulting. The boom in jobs in financial services and consulting during the last 10 years made obtaining a prestigious MBA degree long viewed as essential to gaining entry to these careers a very attractive option. Even if one had previously worked in the industry, an MBA from a high-ranking school was, for many years, a de facto requirement for climbing the ladder. The deans we interviewed from higher-ranking schools were clear on the value that they believed accrued to those armed with an MBA. It ensured access to these, as well as other, attractive, otherwise inaccessible careers. In their eyes as well as those of many students, the full-time MBA is increasingly aimed at career switchers. For those wishing to change fields to enter investment banking, private equity, hedge funds, or strategy consulting from a prior position in industry, government, or the non-profit world, the MBA has long been viewed as absolutely essential. One dean, for example, noted that nearly 80% of students at his prior institution had switched careers upon graduation. The problem for the higher-ranking business schools is that there are a number of forces at work that threaten to undermine or reduce the opportunities for employment in financial services and consulting. Post-crisis, many lucrative jobs in financial services, and to a lesser extent in consulting, have simply disappeared. Each day brings new reports of hedge fund closings and the scaling back of private equity investments. Not surprisingly, the enormously high compensation packages in these fields are shrinking as well, making jobs in these sectors far less attractive. These changes threaten one of the key selling points of the top U. Business schools. A further challenge comes from the fact that companies in these industries have increasingly been promoting from within. In part, this is because technical work, such as sales and trading, now contributes a large share of the firm's profits relative to activities such as investment banking. Consequently, many companies are actively discouraging their best young people from leaving lower-level positions for business school, arguing that their odds of success are actually better if they stay at the firm. This theme can be heard, with minor variations, from executives at two financial services firms. Previously, the Wall Street tradition was to send analysts for the MBA. That's no longer the case. We do not want to show these people the door because they are valuable to us. Now, a third of the analyst class is offered full-time associate positions without doing an MBA. For technical work, the training an analyst gets from a Wall Street firm is better than the training they would receive at business school. With the exception of investment banking and investment management, the firm is, by and large, not hiring MBAs, even though we are much bigger. Instead, we hire undergraduates from elite institutions, who rise up the ladder. They are paid more, faster, to induce them to stay. The same point was made by a senior partner in a consulting firm, who, when asked pointedly if he would advise a highly successful junior person with several years at the firm who was intent on a career in consulting whether an MBA would be valuable for his future, answered, "Definitely not." At the same time, financial services and consulting firms are increasingly substituting non-MBAs. The numbers are small but growing. Before the crisis, a managing director at one large investment bank noted that his firm still hired 300 to 400 MBAs per year but only about 50 technical experts with PhDs or comparable degrees, even though it set out each year to hire twice as many. These latter individuals are viewed as essential because the fields of finance and strategy have become increasingly analytical and because leading financial services firms are, as one experienced financial executive put it, increasingly dominated by traders who believe business school is a waste of time. According to a senior manager at a leading investment bank, the investment banking industry needs to recruit more technically competent people than it did in the past because our products, and the industry as a whole, are more complex. The requirements are higher than even the most quantitative MBA programs can deliver. As a result, we are aggressively pursuing PhDs in business, finance, mathematics, physics, and operations. The common thread is that all are people who are highly analytical and can translate complex situations into mathematical models. The percentage of MBAs that we hire will go down in the next 10 years. A director of a leading consulting firm made much the same point. We now hire a very large number of non-MBAs into our associate roles. In fact, our incoming mix is 50% MBA and 50% non-MBA. The non-MBAs mostly come from medical schools, medical school residency programs, law schools, and a variety of PhD programs in economics, applied math, physics, life sciences, and computer science. The non-MBA portion of the mix is growing, and we are actively seeking to expand into these sources. In the past, deans and business school faculty had a ready response to questions about the value of the MBA degree. Graduate business training was a way of getting ahead of the pack and igniting one's career. MBAs, the argument ran, were a breed apart and were more likely to be placed on the fast track. They might not be the best technicians, but their breadth of training and skills would win out over the long haul. Although this may still be true in some fields, it appears to be less true in others. At least before the crisis, for those in financial services wishing to accelerate their careers, who hope to stay in the same function or area and get promoted more rapidly or frequently at the same company, the 2-year, full-time MBA was no longer viewed as necessary. Both the head of a leading hedge fund and a senior executive at a leading investment bank made much the same point. Something has changed in the last few years. We've always hired young people from elite colleges and universities and started them as analysts. For many years we found that after 6 or 7 years with us and 1 or more promotions, they would hit a wall. We had to send them to business school to get the grounding and perspective necessary to make it to the upper rungs of the firm. But recently, we've found that our young people have been able to make the jump without leaving for an MBA. Those 2 years of training just aren't needed. You are 3 times as likely to become a managing director at our firm if you are an associate who came up through the ranks than if you are an associate hired after an MBA. Whether the financial crisis will alter these views about obtaining an MBA is still unclear. Taken together, the threats identified throughout this chapter suggest challenges for all MBA programs, including the most highly ranked programs. Enrollments are under pressure, and questions are being raised about the value added of the degree, especially the 2-year, full-time version, when compared with alternatives. To learn more about the opportunities for strengthening the traditional MBA degree, we examined the structure and content of the programs at 11 leading schools, Chapter 3, and spoke at length with deans and executives about their perceptions of program deficiencies and how they might be improved, Chapter 4. Appendix, Master S degrees at a sample of leading U. Business schools. Schools are ordered by increasing number of Master S programs offered. Within categories they are listed alphabetically by school name. Harvard Business School Full-Time MBA, 2 years Tuck School of Business, Dartmouth Full-Time MBA, 2 years Darden School of Business, University of Virginia Full-Time MBA, 2 years MBA for Executives, 23 months, with a third of the core curriculum delivered online. In residence once a month on Friday and Saturday, Stanford Graduate School of Business Full-Time MBA, 2 years Sloan Master S program, 10 months, full-time, leading to a MSc for mid-career executives, the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania Full-Time MBA, 2 years Executive MBA, part-time, 24 months, 2 locations, Philadelphia and San Francisco. Yale School of Management Full-Time MBA, 2 years Leadership in Healthcare MBA for Executives, offered jointly with Yale's School of Medicine and School of Public Health. 22 months Carlson School of Management. University of Minnesota Full-Time MBA, 2 years Part-Time MBA, 2 to 7 years Executive MBA, 21 months Fisher College of Business, Ohio State University Full-Time MBA, 2 years MBA for Working Professionals, 2 to 5 years Executive MBA, 18 months Tepper School of Business, Carnegie Mellon University Full-Time MBA, either 2 years or 16 months, take classes during summer rather than an internship, part-time MBA, usually 3 years Distance Learning MBA, usually 3 years the University of Chicago Booth School of Business Full-Time MBA, 2 years Evening and Weekend MBA, part-time, to 5 years Executive MBA, 20 months, offered in Chicago, London, and Singapore Wisconsin School of Business Full-Time MBA, 2 years Evening MBA, 3 years Executive MBA, 2 years College of Management, Georgia Institute of Technology Full-Time MBA, 2 years Evening MBA, 2 to 6 years Executive MBA in Management of Technology, 19 months Global Executive MBA, 17 months Columbia Graduate School of Business Full-Time MBA, 2 years Executive MBA, New York-based EMBA, 20 months Global EMBA, with London Business School 20 months Berkeley Columbia EMBA, 19 months Goizueta Business School, Emory University Full-Time MBA, A, 2 years, B, 1 year, with an undergraduate degree in business or economics or prior coursework in statistics, financial accounting, corporate finance, and microeconomics. Evening MBA, 24 to 33 months Executive MBA, 16 months Haas School of Business, University of California at Berkeley Full-Time MBA, 2 years Evening and Weekend MBA, part-time, 3 years Berkeley Columbia Executive MBA, 19 months Master S in Financial Engineering, 1 year Johnson School of Management, Cornell University Full-Time MBA, 2 years Accelerated MBA, 1 year, requires an advanced degree, leadership potential, and strong quantitative skills. Executive MBA, 22 months, classes on alternate weekends in New York area. Cornell Queen S University, Canada, Executive MBA, 17 months, earn 2 degrees. Kelly School of Business, Indiana University Full-Time MBA, 2 years Online MBA, 2 to 5 years MSc in Information Systems, 2 to 3 semesters, full-time MSc in Accounting, 1 year, full-time Kellogg School of Management, Northwestern University Full-Time MBA, A, 2 years, B, 1 year for students who have either an undergraduate degree in business or have taken the core courses part-time MBA, to 5 years executive MBA, 2 years for mid-career executives, Stern School of Business, New York University full-time MBA, 2 years part-time MBA, evening and weekend-only options, 2 to 6 years executive MBA, 22 months Trium Global EMBA, Stern, LSE, HEC School of Management, 16 months Anderson School of Management, University of California at Los Angeles full-time MBA, 2 years fully employed MBA, 33 months executive MBA, 22 months UCLA National University of Singapore Business School Global Executive MBA, residential sessions in L. and Singapore Master of Financial Engineering, 1 year Fuqua School of Business, Duke University full-time MBA, 2 years Executive MBA, MBA Cross-Continent, 16 months MBA Global Executive, 18 months MBA Weekend Executive, 20 months Goethe Executive MBA, dual degree with Frankfurt University's Goethe Business School, 22 months Kenan Flagler Business School, University of North Carolina full-time MBA, 2 years weekend MBA, 20 months evening MBA, 24 months global MBA, 21 months Master of Accounting. 1 year, full-time McDonough School of Business, Georgetown University full-time MBA, 2 years evening MBA, 3 years International Executive MBA, 18 months Georgetown Assade Executive MBA, 16 months, in 6 11-day modules Executive Master S in Leadership, part-time, 13 months Olin Business School, Washington University full-time MBA, 2 years Professional MBA, 3-year evening program Executive MBA, SD. Lewis and Shanghai, 18-month weekend program MSc in Finance, 1 year Master of Accountancy, 1 or 2 years Ross School of Business, University of Michigan full-time MBA, 2 years evening MBA, 3 to 4 years executive MBA, 20 months, in residence once per month on Fridays and Saturdays. Global MBA, 16 months, for corporate-sponsored executives only. Master of Accountancy, Master of Supply Chain Management, both 1-year programs. Sloan School of Management, Massachusetts Institute of Technology full-time MBA, 2 years Sloan Fellows Program in Innovation and Global Leadership, 1 year Leaders for Manufacturing, 2 years MBA or MS, with School of Engineering Systems Design and Management, 13 to 24 months MS, with School of Engineering Biomedical Enterprise, 3 years MBA or MS, with Harvard-MIT Division of Health Sciences and Technology McCombs School of Business, University of Texas full-time MBA, 2 years evening MBA, 33 months, part-time, classes on Monday and Tuesday evenings. Texas MBA at Houston, 2 years, part-time, classes on alternate weekends. Texas MBA at Dallas, 2 years, part-time, classes on alternate weekends. Texas Executive MBA, 2-year program for mid-career professionals. Texas Executive MBA at Mexico City, with Technologist de Monterrey. 2 years Texas Master of Public Accounting, 12 to 18 months, full-time Marshall School of Business, University of Southern California full-time MBA, 2 years MBA for professionals and managers, 33 months, evening program Executive MBA, 2 years EMBA in Shanghai, conducted at Shanghai Jiaotong University, 21 months Aber MBA, intensive 12-month, full-time program in International Management. Master of Accounting, 1 year, full-time. Master of Business Taxation, 1 year full-time, or 2 years part-time. Master of Medical Management, 12 months, part-time. MSc in Business Administration, full-time or part-time, for students who already have an MBA and want to go deeper. 1 to 5 years Simon Graduate School of Business, University of Rochester full-time MBA, 21 months, or accelerated program in 18 months part-time MBA, average 3 years executive MBA, 2 years Master of Science degrees, full-time 9 to 11 months, or part-time 15 months to 3 years, in 9 areas: accountancy, information systems management, finance, general management, marketing, manufacturing management, medical management, service management, technology transfer, and commercialization. Search settings, Q support, sign out. 3. A close look at the curriculum. A curriculum is no more than an assemblage of classes and materials that collectively constitute an educational program. It plays 2 distinct roles, serving as both a rulebook of regulations and requirements and an expression of what an institution believes education means. Curricula are normally divided into required and elective components. Of special importance is the Common Core, taken by all students, because it provides a base of shared knowledge, a series of points of reference, and builds esprit de corps. There are, not surprisingly, myriad variations and a large number of design choices. The most basic decisions involve content, which disciplines and subject areas to cover, which courses and classes to require, and which concepts, theories, techniques, and modes of thinking to feature. An associated set of decisions concerns pedagogy, which teaching approaches to favor when conveying material or developing skills, and what methods to use for evaluating students' mastery and academic understanding. At the next level come decisions about architecture, how to divide up required and elective portions of the curriculum, how to structure and sequence classes, what types of concentrations and specializations to allow, and the extent and composition of joint or combined degrees. Finally, at the highest level come decisions about purpose, what broad goals and educational ends the curriculum is expected to serve. Standardization or differentiation. In some settings, such as elementary and secondary education, these decisions are largely dictated or defined by overseeing bodies and accrediting institutions. The result is a high degree of consistency in curricula across institutions, at least within broad geographical areas. In Bachelor S, Master S, and doctoral programs, by contrast, many of the critical elements of the curriculum are subject to discretion and local tailoring, with limited efforts to impose standardization or uniformity. Even so, powerful forces favor convergence. Institutions tend to mimic the leaders in their fields, accrediting groups impose standards, and societal pressures and educational trends frequently push curricula in common directions. The shifting stance of colleges on required courses provides a telling example. In 1890, the required curriculum at the average American college amounted to 80% of all courses. By 1940, as students became more diverse, the number of course offerings increased, and possible fields of study mushroomed, that share had declined to 40%. MBA programs are subject to the same forces. Particularly in the years following publication of the Ford Foundation and Carnegie Corporation studies, schools tried to upgrade their course content by embracing the model curricula described in the reports. The pressures for conformance were strong. Both studies were highly directive. They identified the particular set of courses that should be offered and even indicated the number of hours that should be devoted to each. The result, according to a careful analysis of business schools published in 1988, was the emergence of a cookie-cutter mentality and a distressing tendency for schools to avoid the risk of being different. The question, of course, is whether such consistency is still to be found today, and if so, to what extent. The last 2 decades have been periods of extraordinary growth in business education, with schools competing intensively for students and faculty. Competition normally increases the amount of differentiation in product and service offerings. Articles in the popular press cite the wave of recent MBA redesigns and the rise of B-schools with a niche. At the same time, the forces favoring imitation, driven largely by business school rankings, discussed in the following chapter, have increased. According to one scholar, the result is a collection of virtually identical MBA programs, based on a dominant design with few significant variations. Two deans offered similar assessments. There is a great interest in what everyone else is doing, driven by the rankings. The result is commoditization and mass production of graduates around a core curriculum that is indistinguishable across schools. When our alumni do not believe that there is any difference between the top MBA programs and see them all as finishing schools, there is a differentiation problem. Prior assessments of MBA curricula. Prior studies offer conflicting evidence on these points. A 1999 study of MBA programs at 25 leading U.S. schools sorted programs into groups according to the core courses and concentrations that they offered. Using statistical methods, the authors identified 6 distinct groups or clusters of schools, and further noted that each of the 5 leading programs belonged to a different cluster, suggesting considerable variation and no single route to superior performance. However, a closer examination of the study's data on core courses shows a striking degree of similarity. 6 courses: finance, financial accounting, marketing management, microeconomics, operations management, and organizational behavior were required at 23 of the 25 schools. 2 additional courses, macroeconomics and management information systems, were required at 15 or more schools. Moreover, required courses typically accounted for about half of each program, with a range of between 40 and 55%. This is hardly differentiation on a massive scale. A more recent study of the 50 top U.S. business schools reported similar results. It too sought to cluster schools into thematic categories and identified 6 different groupings. But again, despite a smattering of distinctive offerings such as multidisciplinary exercises, experiential field projects, and team competitions, the amount of differentiation was limited. Clusters were usually distinguished by small shifts in the set of required offerings, slightly different mixes that reflected the inclusion or exclusion of a course in communications, ethics, globalization, information technology, or leadership. Again, there were striking levels of commonality, and 30 of the 50 schools fell into a single cluster. The same 7 courses: marketing, corporate finance, financial accounting, operations and supply chain management, corporate strategy, managerial economics, and quantitative analysis, including statistics, were required at least 85% of the time, and 5 additional courses: managerial/cost accounting, management information systems, management communications, organizational behavior, and macroeconomics were required at least 50% of the time. Here too the picture was mixed, but was largely one of standardization. These studies, although suggestive, are limited in that they do not provide comprehensive, multidimensional portraits of MBA programs. In particular, they use an extremely narrow definition of the curriculum, focusing almost entirely on course mix while saying little or nothing about pedagogy, architecture, or purpose. A number of critical questions remain unanswered. How is the core curriculum structured and sequenced? Are students grouped into cohorts or teams, and, if so, for how long do they stay together? What options do students have? For example, Can first-year students waive requirements by taking qualifying exams, enroll in different levels of required courses, basic, intermediate, or advanced, or pursue electives amidst their required courses? Prior studies have been silent on these questions. They have been equally silent on issues of course content and pedagogy. Schools may require similar sets of courses, but how similar or different are they? Do courses focus on the same topics and devote comparable amounts of time to each one, or do they differ in coverage and emphasis? Do different programs favor different teaching approaches? To what extent do they rely on textbooks, articles, cases, and exercises? These distinctions are important because they provide a baseline for assessing current critiques of business education and for calibrating the concerns of deans and executives that we review in the next chapter. They also help us understand the degree to which differentiation has already occurred, and the degree to which schools are operating from a common base. Without this information, we simply cannot say, at a granular, refined level, how MBA programs compare and the degree to which they are truly similar or different. Putting MBA programs under the microscope to address these questions, we conducted a detailed analysis of the 2006 and 2007 curricula of 11 leading MBA programs: Carnegie Mellon, Tepper, Chicago Booth, Dartmouth, Tuck, Harvard, INSEAD, MIT, Sloan, NYU, Stern, Northwestern, Kellogg, Stanford, Wharton, and Yale. The sample consists entirely of highly ranked schools, including all 5 programs that are profiled in the case studies of Part 2. We collected detailed data on program purpose, architectures, course offering. That is the heart of Rethinking the MBA. If it helped, a quick subscribe keeps more summaries coming. So how do business and time connect? That is exactly where we started. Go back to the top and watch it click into place.